Very interesting. So first up, I was super excited to be able to convince Chris. Actually, it didn't take much convincing. Chris said, sure, I'll do it. Chris Poole, the founder of 4chan, and his new company, Canvas, coming to give us a higher bit. So please welcome Chris Poole to the stage.
Thank you. The portrait of identity online is often painted in black and white. On one hand, you have Facebook. Facebook purports that you have one identity. Who you are online is who you are offline. On the other hand, you have anonymity, which to most represents something that's chaotic and unknown. And so it makes sense that when most people build web products, they build it for the former. Identity online comes into play mostly when we think about expression and sharing. And we've wrangled with this problem of audience for many years now. When Google launched Plus, they introduced circles, this form of asymmetric sharing where you could segment your audience and share with certain groups what you wish to. And Facebook followed suit with smart lists. What they both failed to understand is the core problem there. It's not the audience. It's your context within that audience. It's not who you share with. It's who you share as and your context within that group. Who I am as Chris, the speaker on the stage, is different from who I am as a son, as a friend, as a coworker, and hopefully one day as a husband and a father, because we all have multiple identities. And that's not something that's abnormal. It's just a part of being human, because identity is prismatic. There are many lenses through which people view you, and we're all multifaceted people. Google and Facebook would have you believe that you're a mirror, that there is one reflection that you have. There's this one idea of self. What you see in that mirror is what everybody else sees. But in fact, we're more like diamonds. You can look at people from any angle, and you can see something totally different, and yet they're still the same. And there's not a single service online that allows for this and is designed this way. And Facebook instead has kind of tried to drive this one-size-fits-all, almost fast food approach to identity on us all. I have more options in the toothbrush aisle at a supermarket than when it comes to how I choose to express myself online. I mean, how many people here have registered for a forum, was interested in Screamo or goth when they were younger, who's registered for a forum or participated in a chat room, something that you might not be especially proud of or something that you'd want to show off on your Facebook wall. And how incredible is it that we can actually do that and explore certain passions and interests, again, that are very personal to us and that we don't want to see the rest of the world to see. We were on the right track at one point. If you remember the early days of the web, it's true that most people used their real name when it was mostly comprised of researchers and military contractors, the people that were actually inventing the web. And as the namespace became more crowded, we started to use handles. And people created all these handles. And up until very recently, when we've kind of rebounded against that, that was the rule. I mean, if you go to, actually, I remember the first time that if we ever remember picking our AOL screen names, like that for me, when I was, 8, was a huge deal. Like it took me 4 hours to pick my AOL screen name because I knew that that was a representation of who I was. People would read that, and that's, immediately that was the first impression that they had of me, was that handle that I chose. And if you go to any HackerCon in the US and you ask somebody what their name is, they'll respond with a handle. And that's not because hackers are paranoid or secretive. It's because they chose that name. That's the name that they identify with, not the name that they were given by their parents, the name that they chose for themselves. I think Twitter does actually the best job with this because if you think about Twitter, you register using a handle. All of the interaction on the service is using a handle. Most people put in their full name. I mean, anecdotally, most of the people I follow do. And yet there's still this really rich form of interaction and communication that takes place on Twitter's platform because your Twitter stream is interest-driven, or interest-based instead of being identity-driven. And you're able to show people one of your many facets, your followers. And Twitter also, like if you think about the apps, most of the apps support multiple accounts. Facebook would never allow this, right? I mean, they don't. And it's not uncommon to have people who have personal accounts and business accounts, and there's a whole spectrum in between the two. When Google launched Plus, they did not allow people to choose handles. They don't allow you to set a vanity URL. Even Facebook allows that. And they required people to use their full name. In fact, they've gone so far as to delete accounts where people haven't used the real name. And I think that they missed a gigantic opportunity to innovate there. And instead, they've kind of chosen to try to beat Facebook on their own turf by copying the same kind of broken principles that Facebook subscribes to. And that because there's this steadfast devotion and kind of blindness that Facebook has to how identity really truly is, there's a huge opportunity that exists in the marketplace. And that you can incorporate identity without forcing your users to sacrifice something. You can be selective about your implementation, something like Facebook Connect. I mean, with Canvas, we require that you register an account to participate in the service. We require that you authenticate that account using Facebook, because Facebook is a great way of weeding out kind of your more casual trolls and spam bots. But on the service, we still allow them to interact using the handle that they chose for themselves. We allow them to post anonymously, and we allow them to even actually go back and claim those anonymous posts. And what really bothers me is this kind of dictation where Facebook and Google are dictating the way that the entire population is, in their mind, meant to use the web. And that Facebook is kind of consolidating identity and making us more simple than we really truly are. Most people think of me as somebody who is, pro-anonymity. Like, that's what they think of me as, like the guy who stumps around for anonymity. But, I don't see myself as any more an advocate for anonymity than I do for identity. I'm just somebody who cherishes having options. I like having choices. And it's really disturbing to me that over time, our options are being eroded by the big players in the identity space. And I just don't understand how anybody could say that's a good thing. And what's really at stake now is the ability to be creative and expressive on the internet. And I especially worry about young people. I mean, part of growing up is finding who you are, what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, and being an idiot, right? Making mistakes. And now that we have this kind of persistent, consolidated identity that exists online, I mean, look at Timeline. That's what it is. I fear that we've truly lost this ability to kind of, for the youth to kind of explore themselves and to make these kind of youthful indiscretions. I spoke at Facebook 2 years ago, of all places, and at the end of my talk, an engineer asked me, he said, "What can we do? What would you ask of us?" And I thought about that, and I said, you guys set the bar. You set the bar for what we all come to expect in terms of identity and privacy online. And you should be very mindful of where you set that bar, because everybody follows suit, and it affects everybody on the web. And I realize now that that's not correct, because they don't set the bar, we do. We set the bar as users of the web. And we're quickly approaching, as the line between online and offline is becoming quickly, increasingly blurred, we're quickly approaching this fork in the road, where we're about to sacrifice something that's valuable and it's special, and the complexity and identity is part of what defines our humanity, and we're coming close to losing that. And so I would ask us all to strive, for this ideal when we create products, when we design products, but more so, us as users on the web, what we demand from services, that we are increasingly mindful of this kind of fork in the road that's approaching. Facebook and Google do identity wrong. Twitter does it better. And I want to think about what the world would be like if we did it right. Thank you.
I really appreciate you not having a PowerPoint. Thank you very much for providing that point of view.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.